Coming to you from the Deep South, this is the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast. High impact leadership is not reserved for leaders, and it has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. However, it does have everything to do with your character. It's time to climb to the next level and beyond, personally and professionally. Now, let's start making it happen with your host, Mack Story.
Hello, and thanks for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast today. Today, I want to talk to you a little bit about what Ria and I done recently. It was actually October the 30th. I think this episode won't be coming out until the middle of November. But anyway, as Ria and I had the opportunity to speak to a bunch of student leaders who are part of the FFA, Future Farmers of America Association. We spoke to those students were from 5 different county schools in Carroll County, Georgia, over in the Carrollton, Georgia area. It was pretty neat to get to speak to those students. They were, most of them were aged 11 to 17. Most of them were more in the high school range, but there was one group of middle school students there. So it was pretty cool to get to go speak with them. And I checked out the FFA website and in advance and saw that there was a lot of alignment between what Ria and I speak and talk about and the ethics and the vision and the motto of the FFA. So it was great to go speak to them. And what we were actually speaking about, and actually a friend of ours, Darren Baldwin, he was previously the dean of the technical division at Southern Union Community College over in Opelika, Alabama. And he retired from there, and now he's a high school teacher, teaching FFA classes to the FFA students at Central High in Carroll County. So once he got moved over to his new role, we had already supported Darren back in over in Opelika with Southern Union State Community College, his staff and different things like that. But anyway, he invited us to come over and speak to the students, and they put together their first annual FFA leadership event, and it was pretty cool. And we talked to them about blue collar leadership and teamwork, 30 traits of high impact players. So I want to share with you just some of the things we did talk about, some of the traits we shared with them, share with you some of the FFA motto, code of ethics, those sort of things, just to share with you how it aligns up and some of the things we talk about. And I'll give you some feedback that we received from some of the students. They were phenomenal. Based on that group of students, and there were 70 or 80 of them in the room. We spoke to them for 2 hours. They had a longer event, but the 2 hours that we were there was spent speaking specifically to all of the students. So that was a pretty enlightening day for us. It was just awesome. That's all I can tell you. Those young folks, if they're representing what we got coming up, our future's bright. Because I put a heavy load on their shoulders, just like I do the adults when I go out and speak to the adults most of the time. The stuff that Ria and I talk about, if you want to get on board with living and teaching what we speak and talk about, it's for most people, it's a heavy load. And what I mean by that is it requires a lot of looking in the mirror and doing a lot of work on yourself, and then you're busy. So then moving above and beyond what you're already doing to take on something else, it's a heavy load. And that's what I told the students. And I told them I thought they were all more than capable of carrying that load, because our world needs them to carry it. Because as I was telling them, all they got to do is look out the window and they can see what the adults in the world today are capable of achieving, because they're the ones responsible for the world we live in. It's not those young folks. Hopefully those young folks are going to grow up, take some of the stuff that we taught them and stuff they're learning from a whole lot of other people, especially throughout the FFA, and go out and make our world a better place. Just real quick, I'll share with you the FFA motto is learning to do, doing to learn, earning to live, living to serve. That right there is awesome. Learning to do, the first piece of that. they're learning to be proactive. They're learning to execute. They're gaining experience, which is the second part of that motto: doing to learn. They're they're expected to be engaged, and they are engaged. At least the group we spoke to, and I suspect they're representing the FFA students' mindset throughout the country. So it was pretty powerful. And then the other component, earning to live, and they mean live with a high degree of character, because that last component is about living to serve. And you've heard me talk before. I talk about high impact leadership. It's the same as servant leadership, but you don't have to explain it quite so much. And sometimes people don't like the word servant or serving, but servant is just a synonym for helper. Serving is just a synonym for helping. So you call it whatever you want to. Helping, serving, doesn't make any difference to me. Long as you want to be on that team of people who want to grow and develop themselves so that they can help other people grow and develop themselves and live a better life. So with one of the things we taught these young folks was, you've heard me say it before, but character is more likely to be caught than taught. And as I was talking to them, I was, asking them to reflect on their home life. I don't know any of these students. I don't know the life they're living. I don't know what goes on in their house. But I know there's a lot of things being caught in their house that may not be literally taught in their house. It may not be good. Hopefully it is. But when we say character is more likely to be caught than taught, it doesn't just mean good character. It could also be bad character. It's just character. Character in general. People you hang around the most. Who are they? How do they live? How do they carry themselves? So the first trait we taught them is actually trait 1 out of the book. And I may do a series on this book next year and really talk about each one of these traits, the 30 traits. I may, do a podcast series and dedicate an episode to each trait. But today I'm just sharing some of the first 10 traits. I may not get to all of them, but just kind of an overview. If you're not familiar with that book, you may want to download it on audio or get the paperback copy, the ebook, and dive into it. But just sharing with you some of the things we shared with them. And again, we'll be sharing this with the U.S. Navy up in Philadelphia at some point. They've asked us to come up and do a leadership development session once a quarter for the next 4 quarters. And this book is one of them, one of the 4. We're going to be speaking on all of our blue collar, not all of them, but 4 of our blue collar leadership books, my blue collar leadership books. And this is one of them. But that first trait we taught them, and it's kind of based on the code of ethics. The FFA's code of ethics, number 1 on that list was develop my potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. If you know me, I think that's pretty awesome right there. If you're listening to me, you're probably aligned with me. If you're not familiar with the FFA, I mean, that's the number 1 top of the list code of ethics. Develop my potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. When I read that, I thought that one item right there from their code of ethics explained why Darren wanted to invite us to come over there and speak to these students. Because that's what we do. We help develop people's potential in the area of leadership, personal growth, so that they can have a successful career. But trait 1, relative to that, is be growth oriented. It aligns perfectly with number 1 from their code of ethics. Be growth oriented. And the vision of the FFA is this: FFA provides the next generation of leaders who will change the world. That's their vision. That's pretty powerful vision. FFA provides the next generation of leaders who will change the world. As I read on their website, FFA again stands for Future Farmers of America, but FFA has grown into something far beyond that. I mean, there's engineers are in the FFA, future doctors, future veterinarians, entrepreneurs. It's still future farmers, but there's a lot of other people who support farmers in different kind of roles and different areas of life that have also become a part of their organization. They've expanded who they're catering to, so it was pretty neat. But what be growth oriented? I teach that in that book. It's the first trait in my book, Blue Collar Leadership and Teamwork. And what I talk about is the keys to be growth oriented first and goal oriented second. When you do that, you're always setting new goals to facilitate your overall mission, which is continued growth. Like I was telling those students, there are a lot of students. They just want to get done with high school. That's their goal. Finish high school, get a job, and then just do the job and hope life gets better. Then there's some of them that their goal is to finish high school and finish college and then get a job and do the job and hope life gets better. I remember some research studies. It's something like, I can't remember now, 30-40% of people, maybe it's a bigger number than that. They graduate high school, never read another book. Same percentage pretty much. They graduate college, never read another book. It's because those folks who do that, they're not growth oriented. They're goal oriented. They may want a specific job, and when they get that job, they feel like now they can just coast through life. And they can. It's up to them. It's up to you. But when you make being growth oriented the ultimate goal, you don't ever get there. You're a lifetime student. As an example, it's why I read every day. Y'all probably sick and tired of hearing me say that all the time. There's a bunch of reasons I do it. One reason I do it is because I'm growth oriented. I've been reading every day since 2008. Leadership development, personal growth content. It's because of that principle right there. I've learned to be growth oriented. That's one small way that I can intentionally grow every day. No matter what else I do, as long as I do that, and I literally do it every day, I'm carrying out that mission. I do a lot of other stuff besides that too, but that is my number one thing that I do to intentionally be growth oriented. And what I teach people is, or what I believe and what I know, is sacrifice plus discipline equals growth. Sacrifice, that means I got to give up my time to grow. Whatever that means in your life, growing, you got to sacrifice. You got to exchange some time. Maybe you ain't gonna be having fun unless you like growing. Then it becomes fun. But some people, they want to grow, but they don't necessarily like growing, or things they do for fun is more fun than growing and developing themselves. So sacrifice is, you got to make those sacrifices. But giving up time or monies that you may have spent on something else to invest in your own development, whether that's going to college or going to a seminar or buying a book or whatever it is, you got to give up something and redirect those resources, time, money, whatever it is, toward being growth oriented to achieve the goals that you set that keep you growth oriented. But that giving up the sacrifice, it's not enough. It's never enough. Sacrifice is never enough by itself. You got to add that to discipline. Now you got to have the discipline to take the time and the resources and actually grow. So sacrifice plus discipline equals growth. But it's all relative, right? So why should you focus on growth? Because growth creates freedom and options. And your life will always be better with more freedom and more options. And what I told the young folks when we were speaking to them, I told them pretty early on, I asked them how many wish they could grow up and graduate high school or graduate college, and their hope for their future, that they just wished that life would be bad. They wouldn't have a good job. They wouldn't make much money. How many of them you think raised their hand and said They were hoping they wouldn't have a good life and they wouldn't make much money. None of them raised their hand. But I was explaining to them how our choices are going to determine the life that we live. And I asked him, I said, you probably think me asking you that question was kind of crazy, because who wants to have a worse life? But then I asked him, how many of you have made a choice that caused your life to be worse? And then they get that serious look on their face, just like the adults do when we're talking to them, because it comes down to our choices. But growth creates freedom and options. And too many people, especially the adults, once you grow up, they want security and stability. But a lot of times, security and stability doesn't come with freedom and options. But if you get freedom and options, you're going to have security and stability. So what I was asking them, what I told them was, at their young age, start figuring out. And again, they were ages 11 to 17, basically. I, I encouraged them, follow your passion. Start figuring out what you're passionate about. You'll have this. I'm asking you to have this talk with the youth in your life. If you've got children or grandchildren, or there's other young folks in your life, help them understand. Try to find their passion, and they'll start aligning their life around their passion. You should be doing this too, but it's a whole lot easier if you start doing it when you're young, and that's what I'm talking to you about today. Because, like I told them, if you start being growth oriented, focused, and directed toward your passion, one thing I can tell you about your life is you're gonna have a good life. You're gonna be happy about what you're doing, and if you'll do the other thing I told them, which is don't go in debt up to your eyeballs. Do your best not to even go in debt at all. Then you'll be happy your entire life, because you'll be doing what you're passionate about doing. Like when I discovered leadership development, personal growth content, I didn't know I was going to be passionate about it, but I figured it out pretty quick. And then I became growth oriented pretty quick, and my life started to change. When I intentionally started changing my mind started automatically changing my life. So that was two of the nuggets I gave the young folks. Start following your passion so you can discover your purpose, and then do your best to stay out of debt as you get started in life. And I told them it's going to be a hard thing, because folks of low character, I was guilty of it myself. We start trying to impress people. And while we trying to impress people, our life gets rough because we get a lot of debt. Happily, I'm far beyond that phase of my life now, but I lived it for a while, and it was rough. So I want to talk about just a little bit about the second trait that I talk to the FFA students about. Trait two of the from blue collar leadership and teamwork. Trait two is be trustworthy. The number 5 item from their code of ethics is be courteous, honest, and fair with others. So when you talk about honesty and being fair, even being courteous, everything in there will make you a trustworthy person. And y'all have heard me say it before, your character either launch you or limit you. And that code of ethics for the FFA students, it is full of character development from top to bottom. That FFA program is doing a lot to help these young folks launch into the world, to be positioned in a way to help us out. We need some help. I really hope and I believe and feel there's going to be some young people in that room who was in the room with us the other day. They learned some nuggets that's going to stick with them for life. I can guarantee you. One of the young ladies when we got done, we interacted with them and talked to them throughout the session. One of the young ladies, when I was walking around after it was done and they were eating lunch, I walked around and talked to different tables with the different groups. So I went over to these two young ladies were sitting there, and I said, "How old are y'all?" Because they were pretty small young ladies. I said, "How old are y'all?" In unison, they said 11, and I thought, "Wow," because I had been watching them the whole time we were speaking, and they were paying attention. And so I asked them, I said, "What did you young ladies get out of this session?" And immediately, one of them, without even thinking, without a second of hesitation, it's like she was waiting to say it when I walked up. But I said, "What did you two young ladies get out of this session?" Remember now, 11 years old. That one who spoke immediately, she said, "I like the part about what you taught us about being two-faced." She said, I hadn't thought about it like that. And I don't want to be a two-faced person." And I had taught them a lesson about how I was a two-faced parent, how I would tell my son not to do the things that I was doing. Don't drink alcohol. Meanwhile, I'm drinking alcohol whenever I wanted it. Telling him when he got 16, you know, don't be speeding. Pay attention to how you're driving. While I've got a Corvette Z06 with long tube headers out there, when I take him somewhere and he rides with me, I'm burning the tires off of it, or I'm speeding. And he hears me telling stories about me going 160 miles an hour and stupid things like that, or me outrunning the law and things like that I used to do before I really got to work on my character. And I talked about how, especially with the young folks, when they start talking about people behind their back, but it applies to all of us. But again, I was talking to young people. So I was teaching it in their context, and I was talking about at school when they're bad mouthing somebody behind their back, and then they go up and they get in a group and they bad mouth somebody. I helped them understand what you're doing when you do that is you're not being trustworthy. You think you're creating trust, but what you're teaching everybody there without even knowing it, most people don't know it because they don't have a high enough level of awareness to understand it. That's why I do this podcast and write my books and speak to provoke thought, raise people's awareness, which is exactly what we told those young folks we were going to do when we walked in there. We declared our intent, but what we wanted them to know is when you badmouthing somebody, you're teaching them you're the kind of person that's going to talk behind somebody's back. And they understood people who say something nice to your face and talk bad about you behind your back is two-faced. They also knew I was being a two-faced parent. It was easy for them to understand. When we started the session with them, when we first walked in, one thing I always say when I'm speaking to young people to get their attention right off the bat, I told them, I said, we're going to do something for you that you wish every adult you met would do for you. All I have to do is say that, and they're paying attention. They're paying attention at that moment. And I'll say, what we're going to do for you is we're going to talk to you like adults because I think you can handle it. And I'm going to teach you the same stuff that we teach and speak to adults all over the country. And I told him I may change the stories that I tell you while I'm teaching it, but I'm going to teach you the same principles. And then that's exactly what we do. Teach the same exact principles that we teach to CEOs, to business owners, to vice presidents, to executives, to frontline workers, to engineers, everybody in every industry, white collar, blue collar. We teach the same principles. We just change the stories a bit depending on where we at. But I'm telling you, those young folks were on top of it. And what I told them was trust is a foundation upon which high impact teams thrive because there's each one of those county schools that was represented there, they have an I don't know if they call them an FFA team, but that's what they were to me. And the students who were in the room were the leaders of the team. And trust is a foundation upon which high impact teams thrive. Trust is based on number one most important thing is a person's character, who they are. And number two, a person's competency, what they know. And I help them understand what that meant to them. And I told them each player, regardless of their position, title, or rank in life or on their team, whatever it may be, is responsible for intentionally helping the team build a strong foundation of trust. And bad mouthing people, whether you're 11, 17, 37, 27, 67, it doesn't matter. You're never going to badmouth people on your team and be a trustworthy team member. It's not going to happen. Even though it's going to feel like it, because the people you're talking to, they're going to be doing the same exact thing as you, and you'll think you're building trust until you have a falling out with them later, and then you walking past and you see them talking. You're going to know exactly what they're talking about. You. Because they have trained you who they are, what their character is. Napoleon Hill had this to say. He says, what you really are will speak so loudly that what you claim you are will not be heard. Y'all have heard me say it before. Somebody's always watching. Somebody literally is always watching. If you're around people, they're watching, they're paying attention. You're giving them a master class in your character. You might be able to mask your character, but you can't hide it. It's on display. Every choice you make, people are watching. So I got time maybe to share one more trait with you. I didn't think I was going to be able to get through too many of them, but the third trait, and it goes, their code of ethics, actually the third trait, just to tell you that real quick, is be humble. You'll notice these first three traits I told you. Be growth oriented, be trustworthy, be humble. All 30 of these traits start with the word be, B-E. Because when it comes to character development, it's not about doing something different. It's about being something different. And that's why all these traits, if you're living out these traits, you're going to be a high impact team player. See, the key to teamwork is not getting people necessarily to work well together. That's not the goal. Maybe let me say it a different way. That is the goal, but that ain't what you focus on. You focus on the root cause. Why are people not working well together as a team? It was because of the individual character of the people. So if you really want to develop a high performance team, focus on developing the individual. Teamwork will take care of itself. You ain't got to focus on that part. So in their code of ethics, number 7 is demonstrate good sportsmanship by being modest in winning and generous in defeat. We all need to be that way. You got to be humble to be that way, I promise you. And you got to be secure. Because, see, insecure people try to prove something on the outside to make up for what's missing on the inside. And too much pride and ego are indicators of insecurity. The most insecure among us are also the least humble among us. And I always like to say your level of humility will reveal your level of security. And again, humility has nothing to do with your position, title, or rank. Humility has everything to do with your character. I'm going to leave you with a quote today from Bob Myers. He had this to say. He says, the best thing we can do is be who we are, whatever that is. We're all drawn to authenticity. We like people who are real. Sometimes real people are flawed. We're all flawed. I think we connect with people who are open, exposed, willing to admit things they're good at, things they're not good at. Try to be humble. Try to be collaborative. Those are some wise words from Bob Myers. And being authentic, that's one of my, I say it's my number one thing I want to be is authentic relative to when we're speaking. I want people to, the number one feedback, I should say, that's a better way to say it. When we get done speaking, I love when people say we're so authentic. We get it all the time. That's because authenticity is a powerful influencer. especially if you're trying to develop high character, if you live in with high character, if you model in high character. Being authentic is a key component of that. Anyway, I'm going to wrap up today's session. Hope you enjoyed it. Go out, teach some leadership and personal growth development principles to some young people. Help them help us. Talk to you next time.
Make it happen or someone else will. It might as well be you. Are you serious about taking your career and your life to the next level and beyond? Check out Mack Story's Blue Collar Leadership series books and others, now available on audio, along with paperback and ebooks at Amazon, iTunes, and Audible. Please visit bluecollarleadership.com to learn about Mack's books, programs, special offers, certifications, and more. Thank you for listening to the Blue Collar Leadership Podcast.